There's nothing that sparks gaming nostalgia quite like the Nintendo Entertainment System. For many of us, it wasn't just another console, it was our very first one. And the cartridges were everywhere, and usually dirt cheap. But fast forward to today, and the story is completely different. The retro gaming market has exploded, and some NES cartridges that once sat in bargain bins are now commanding shockingly high prices. So in this video, I'm counting down 10 NES games that, to me, have gotten way too expensive over the years. Kicking off the list is Darkman, a tie-in game based on the 1990 superhero film directed by Sam Raimi. Licensed games on the NES were usually hit or miss, but Darkman is one of those titles that surprise you once you get past the learning curve. At first glance, it feels clunky and confusing, but once you understand how it wants to be played, and you build up that mental muscle memory for the levels, it actually becomes a pretty fun and varied experience. The game mixes things up more than most movie tie-ins. You've got your standard side-scrolling platforming stages, and then it throws in photography segments where you have to snap pictures of enemies in order to disguise yourself as them later. For all its quirks, Darkman is better than most people expect. It's difficult, but definitely worth playing if you're into hidden gems on the NES. The variety keeps it fun, and it's a stronger game than most licensed tie-ins of the time. But here's the problem. The going rate is about $26 loose. Is it a good game? Yeah. Is it a pay $30 for a cart with no box good? Personally, I don't think so. At that point, it does feel a little expensive for what it is. But if you're curious, it's still one worth experiencing. Coming in next is Prince of Persia on the NES, a game I actually had when it was still fairly new. The reason I bought it was simple. I had already played the original PC and Mac versions and was curious to see how this cinematic platformer would handle on Nintendo's 8-bit hardware. After all, the original Prince of Persia was groundbreaking. Jordan Mechner used rotoscoping to capture realistic human movement, and it gave the game a fluid look that was unlike anything else at the time. So how did the NES port hold up? Honestly, for what it is, it's decent. That said, it's still one of the most technically limited versions of the game. You lose a lot of the atmosphere and detail that made the computer version so iconic. These days, if I were to revisit this game, I'd probably skip this NES port and boot up the Macintosh port from the early 90s. The color version had fantastic graphics, and the black and white version is so nostalgic for me. But then again, the 2007 Prince of Persia Classic remake on PS3 and 360 is another good choice. It did a fantastic job at modernizing the original. Heck, even the Apple II version still has its charm. But paying $30 for what is arguably the weakest version? That's tough to justify unless nostalgia is doing the buying. Next up is Darkwing Duck, based on the classic Disney afternoon cartoons that so many of us raced home to watch after school. The NES game, developed by Capcom, had a lot to live up to, especially since Capcom was also responsible for heavy hitters like DuckTales and Mega Man. Thankfully, it didn't disappoint. The gameplay feels a lot like Mega Man, from the way you navigate platforming stages to the shooting mechanics. But compared to those notoriously tough Mega Man games, Darkwing Duck is on the easier side. The graphics and music really captured the spirit of the show, and for a licensed game, it stood out as one of the better ones. The biggest downside here is the current price tag. Loose copies of Darkwing Duck hover around $66. The kicker is that you don't even need to spend that kind of money to play it today. Capcom bundled Darkwing Duck together with other Disney classics like DuckTales 1 and 2, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 1 and 2, and Tailspin in the Disney Afternoon Collection. And that set goes on sale all the time on modern consoles for about $5. So unless you're determined to own the NES cartridge, there are much better and cheaper ways to let Darkwing take flight again. Sliding in next is Monster in My Pocket, a game based on a toy line that had its big marketing push in the early 90s. If you were around back then, you probably remember the TV ads. Tiny collectible monster figurines, each with their own number in the series. Supposedly there were around 200 of them, and of course some were advertised as being super rare. Where I grew up though, the craze never really took off, and I didn't have a single monster in my pocket. But the NES game? That was a different story. I rented it a few times as a kid, and it left a good impression. The coolest thing about it was the sense of scale. Instead of being a typical hero in a fantasy world, you play as tiny characters in an oversized house. Suddenly, everyday objects like furniture and kitchen appliances became towering obstacles. That kind of imaginative setting really stood out at the time. Gameplay-wise, it's a fun, straightforward, side-scrolling beat-em-up with co-op play, which always makes these kinds of games more enjoyable. The problem is, Monster in my pocket isn't a cartridge you're gonna see often. It's a bit uncommon. And with rarity comes the price tag. These days, you're looking at around $75 for a loose copy. That stings. Unless you've got a pocket full of cash, this monster's probably staying on the shelf. Now here's one that honestly shocked me when I saw the price. Mega Man on the NES is going for about $80 these days. Since when did we start living in a world where the original Mega Man cost that much? The truth is, the price has been high for quite a while. It really started climbing in the mid-2010s, when loose copies were already brushing up against $70. These days it's leveled out to around $80, but still, that's a hefty price tag for a single cart. Of course, we're talking about one of the most iconic franchises in gaming history. The first Mega Man set the stage for Capcom's long-running series, with its unique boss order systems, tough but fair platforming, and that unforgettable soundtrack. The graphics were colorful and crisp for 1987, and while the difficulty was punishing, it helped define what made NES games so rewarding. It's still fun to pick up and play. That said, $80 is hard to justify when there are far cheaper ways to experience it. The Mega Man Legacy Collection, for example, gives you Mega Man 1 through 6 in one package, and that usually goes on sale for around $5 to $10. So unless you're a hardcore collector, that's the way to go. Still, the cartridge price shows just how much respect this series commands, even decades later. Here's a game you don't hear about too often, Uninvited, a horror-themed point-and-click adventure game on the NES. After a car crash in the middle of nowhere, you find yourself exploring a haunted mansion, solving puzzles, and searching for your missing sister. Compared to the action-heavy titles the NES is known for, the pacing here is slow and deliberate. But that's exactly what gives it atmosphere. The game is built more on tension and mystery than quick reflexes, which made it stand out then and still makes it interesting now. Personally, my favorite version is the original Macintosh release. Its stark black and white visuals, brought to life by its vivid, descriptive narration, gave it a creepy edge that's tough to beat. Still, the NES port is no slouch. It was adapted well to a controller, and the music goes a long way towards setting the mood. What's interesting is that Uninvited is part of a trilogy of adventure games on the NES: Deja Vu, Uninvited, and Shadowgate. Out of the three, Shadowgate is the most famous, but it's also the cheapest. You can usually find it for about $10. Deja Vu sits at around $15. Yet here we are with Uninvited at $80 for a loose cartridge. Go figure. For collectors, it's become the expensive oddball of the series, even though all three are worth revisiting. Here's another one I owned as a kid, Felix the Cat. The funny thing is, by the early 90s, a lot of kids didn't even know who Felix was. The character dates all the way back to 1919, making him over a century old now, and he's gone through all kinds of cartoons and reboots over the decades. Felix the Cat was one of the better late-era NES platformers, and one I thoroughly enjoyed back in the day. The story is straightforward Saturday morning cartoon fare. The evil professor kidnaps Felix's girlfriend, Kitty, and wants to steal Felix's magic bag of tricks. Naturally, it's up to Felix to save the day. Gameplay-wise, you don't get the usual Mario-style enemy stomping. Instead, your attacks come from that magic bag, which morphs into all sorts of weapons and vehicles as you collect power-ups. Everything from boxing gloves to submarines. There's a lot of imagination here, except with the enemies. They all seem to be pretty generic. Walking logs, moles, birds, and fish. But the charm of the game lies in its colorful graphics, smooth controls, and upbeat personality. Unfortunately, a loose copy averages around $94 these days, which is a steep ask for a platformer that, while is very good, isn't exactly legendary. It's a fun game, but nostalgia has definitely driven the price sky high. Next up is Toxic Crusaders, a beat-em-up that hit the NES in 1992, pretty late in the console's life. The source material is pretty wild. The game is based on the Toxic Crusaders cartoon, which itself was a Saturday morning kid-friendly spin-off of Troma Entertainment's Toxic Avenger films, movies that were definitely not for kids. Somehow they turned a violent, rated R cult classic movie into a goofy animated series about eco-friendly superheroes, only in the early 90s. As for the game itself, it's a pretty standard side-scrolling beat-em-up. You walk from left to right, bash enemies, and keep moving. Nothing revolutionary, but it's colorful and has that late NES charm. The problem is, the NES library was already jam-packed with better beat-em-ups by then. Double Dragon 2, River City Ransom, Ninja Turtles 2 the arcade game. Compared to those, Toxic Crusaders felt more like a novelty, and yet it's far from cheap. These days, a loose cartridge averages around $114. That price has more to do with its rarity and oddball legacy than its gameplay. It's a fun curiosity if you're into collecting, especially Troma stuff. But if you're just looking to play a solid NES brawler, your money could stretch a lot further elsewhere. If there's one game that really stings to see in the way too expensive category, it's Bucky O'Hare. This was one of my favorite rentals as a kid, and for years it was a fun, affordable hidden gem. Released in 1992, near the tail end of the NES's life, Bucky O'Hare is a fast-paced platformer based on the comic and cartoon of the same name. You play as Bucky, a green space rabbit, out to rescue your captured teammates and take down the villainous Toad Air Marshal. Each of your teammates are scattered across different planets, and you can tackle the stages in different orders. And once you rescue a crew member, they become playable with unique abilities. That variety, combined with the tight controls and excellent level design, made it stand out immediately. And then there's the music, absolutely legendary. Bucky O'Hare hits hard, with upbeat driving tracks that fit the game's energy perfectly. What's frustrating is that for the longest time, this wasn't a super rare or extremely pricey game. Back in the late 2000s, I found copies in the wild for 10 to 20 bucks. Then, seemingly overnight, the price shot up, and now it's one of the more pricier NES titles to collect. These days, a loose cartridge goes for around $140 and can climb closer to $200. I regret letting my cheap copies go, because Bucky O'Hare isn't just expensive, it's genuinely a fantastic game. Topping off the list is Bomberman II, or Bomber 2 Man, a game I used to rent all the time back in the day. If you ever played a Bomberman title, you know the formula. Drop bombs, blow up obstacles, trap your enemies, and try not to blow yourself up in the process. Simple, but endlessly addictive. Bomberman 2 adds just enough to make it feel fresh. This time there's even a storyline. Black Bomberman frames White Bomberman for a robbery, and you have to break out of jail to clear your name. It's light, it's silly, but it gives the action a little more flavor than the bare bones original. The real magic, though, comes from multiplayer. The first NES Bomberman was strictly single player, but Bomberman 2 brought in competitive play, and it's a total blast. With the NES 4-score adapter, you could even get 3 people in on the chaos, one of the few NES games that supported that many players. It instantly turned into the kind of game you break out at a sleepover and lose hours to. Released in Japan in 1991, years after the original 1985 debut, it's a massive improvement over the original in both graphics and gameplay. The huge jump in quality and the fact that it was a late NES release makes it pricey. A loose cartridge now goes for around $150. If you grew up with it, maybe the nostalgia makes it worthwhile. But for most of us, it's one of those NES classics that are probably out of reach forever. And there you have it. 10 NES games that are fun to look back on, even if the price tags today hurt to see. Some I owned, some I rented, and some I only discovered later. But no matter where you fall, it's hard to deny these games carved out a lasting spot in gaming history. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it, and subscribe for more content like this. And if you'd like to see the all-time most expensive NES games, I made a video on that as well, so check it out. Thanks so much for your time today. Goodbye.